All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in this panel today. My name is Megan Beaudet. I'll be hosting, and I would first like to thank again both all of our guests, all of our speakers, and Kongra Star
welcome
for
everyone,
putting this discussion together.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm sorry, something just happened with the sound there, but we're back. So I will be once again thanking everyone for participating in this panel. So we're here to discuss over 10 years into the conflict in Syria and 10 years this summer, marking the anniversary of the July 19th beginning of the Rojava revolution and the revolution in northern and eastern Syria specifically. The role of women every step of the way has been a central aspect of all of these political developments. Women in North and East Syria dared to organize around the principle that a society can't be free if women aren't free. And in order to realize that in real life, they built military institutions like the YPJ, political institutions like Kongra Star. They made sure in all of their forms of government that women would be equally represented, have power over decision-making on matters that had to do with women's rights and women's status in society, and did other forms of organizing, of building new institutions, and ensuring that women could protect and defend their rights and their gains of the revolution. And so because women have been doing this every step of the way, naturally, many of the threats and challenges that North and East Syria have faced have been threats and challenges that women took on firsthand. Today, we'll hear from one of the leaders of the YPJ, leading women's fight against ISIS, which, as we all know, committed horrendous atrocities against women in Syria and Iraq. We'll hear from women who've been active in North and East Syria's system of governance, dealing with the post-war challenges, which we're seeing firsthand now with the ISIS prison break in Hasaka, the challenges of economic sanctions, of drought, climate change, and other environmental factors impacting agriculture and industry in the region. All of these issues are issues that women, first and foremost, have been working to address and counter. And when you look at a place like North and East Syria, where the issues that they face are challenges that states and actors across the international system have tried and failed to find answers for, looking at how women in the region, Kurdish women, Arab women, Syriac women, women of all communities have come together to address these security and governance challenges together and build a system quite unlike anything we've ever seen. This is an essential time for discussing it because the issues we're seeing in North and East Syria impact the world. Defeating ISIS has an impact on the entire world, ensuring that that security challenge can't threaten countries again. Stabilizing the Middle East, ending, not just terrorism, but the sectarianism and oppression and the conditions that lead to terrorist groups and authoritarian regimes, changing that and building a new governance model, that's something that will reverberate around the world. So I'm honored to introduce the women who will be talking about how North and East Syria addresses these challenges, how women have organized, changed their society, and started to transform the way that Syria, the Middle East, and the world looks at women's liberation and women's roles in all different forms of politics and governance. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dilsha Osman. Dilsha is a Kurdish woman from Afrin, who has been a Kurdish women's rights activist since 1997. In 2014, she served as the co-chair of the Conference for a Democratic Society in Europe, and later as the official spokesperson for the Kurdish women's movement in Europe. Dilsha worked for 3 years with Kurdish news channels as a news and program editor, and currently she's a member of the Kongra Star Coordination and the Diplomatic Relations Committee of Kongra Star in Europe. Dilsha, thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And hello, everybody. To save the time, I will begin immediately. The catastrophic events that occurred in Rojava and northeastern Syria over the years underscore the importance of organizing this team. Kurdish forces took control of significant areas of Rojava and northeastern Syria, which led to occupation of the areas of Afrin, Sarikaniye, and Girespi. In the regions of Rojava and northeastern Syria, women took the lead in the Rojava revolution, which became known as the Women's Revolution. and created a place for themselves in the decision-making centers, forming a presence for themselves in all areas of revolution. Of course, this was not the Turkish state wanted, which was and is still hostile the hopes and aspiration of the Kurdish people, especially the aspiration of the conscious woman who is aware of her historical reality. Thus, the Turkish army began barbaric attack on the areas of Rojava and northeastern Syria with the aim of breaking the will of the woman, targeting Afrin in 2018 and Sarikani and Grecipi in 2019. Despite the resistance shown by the people in those areas, which in Afrin lasted 58 days, Turkey was able to occupy them. The region was attacked by the country with NATO weapons, with the help of its Syrian armed factions, and with the support of the silence of the regional and international countries on this aggression. It is no secret to anyone what the people of Afrin have suffered after the occupation. But as I mentioned earlier, the greatest harm always falls on the women and children. As the people of Afrin left their homes and lands under the pressure of forced displacement, and they headed to the Al-Shahba area to live in camps that lack the most basic necessities. From the beginning of the aggression to this day, the Turkish state, through its mercenaries, continue to practice the most heinous violations against the women and children, including murder, kidnapping, torture in prison, sexual violence, suicides, physical and moral abuse, and the marriage of underage girls to the members of the factions under the threat of killing, in addition to seizing and destroying people's property, settling the armed factions' family in them after the displacement of their owners, destroying schools, and even turning some properties into military headquarters and detention center. All of this is in the service of systematic policy aimed to demographic change and ethnic cleansing against the indigenous peoples. The situation of women in displacement camp is not much better than before. Displaced family in general face great obstacles that start with the difficulties of life and the lack of resource and humanitarian aid, which are almost non-exist. Furthermore, what it means to move within the country and leave the house, land, and property to tents that are hardly suitable to living, and the impact of this on women, including the lack of possibility for children to attend school. All of this burdens women, especially psychologically. In conclusion, by noting that the male model turned the world into hell and the need for change, a mental revolution against the male mentality, which is based on religious and sexual fantasism, became an urgent necessity. In order to get, In order to get off this crisis with result for the benefit of society and women, we as a society must research the history of women, find out the facts, and break traditional views. Women have a new choice, the struggle for the better life, which will be achieved through a radical feminist revolution and radical change in the man mentality. Thank you.
Thank you, Delsha, for that wonderful speech and wonderful introduction to the ideas and practices behind the women's revolution in North and East Syria and the threats that they're facing. I think especially as NATO is in the news and we talk about sovereignty and territorial integrity and spheres of influence, we do need to remember when Turkey did invade a separate country, occupied that territory, and what they did, particularly to women, as well as to ethnic and religious minorities in their occupied zones of Afrin, Serikani, and Giresi. So with that, our next speaker will be Arzi Hassan, who is a member of YPJ Command. She'll be talking about the struggle of the YPJ and the women of North and East Syria against patriarchal violence from Kobani to Deir ez-Zor. Thank you, Arzi.
دسته مهمی سپاس دکن جبو به فرصت کو اجمر بکر و مهمی دوست و حواله خال دنیا اجدبیر یر سلاف دکن یه پجی.
Thanks for everyone who are joining us in this panel, and through this great panel we send our salutes to all our comrades around the world.
تسبيكا إيريشن داعش ده كل سر سياحات شيكرن دفعي ده هرم من مكة نبن إيريشاندن وجن وهمي نخن طبعا كنا نكرنا روبروبو.
In the beginning of the Syrian crisis, and when Daesh appeared, the first region were controlled by them were our region. And at that time, when ISIS took control of many of our regions, all the communities of North and East Syria and Rojava, especially women and children, and all valuable things that we have were violated by them.
بقاسي كوت إيريشكي بأرمانجا أباكرنا دولة إسلامي بو دنابا خدجي كولكرنا جنيوي كهدفك سركة دقت ناب خدن.
The world knew that the main purpose of ISIS was establishing the Islamic State, but what they didn't know about ISIS is that also one of their main purposes was to control women.
جبر بيجي شاركي كوباتا كرن تاني لبندا شاركي كوزلام تدجي وخا بقرا وجن وهرتشتكي باريزنا بو جند بن خطري gerek xwa biparasta ji ber wê yekê yê pejit nava şer de despêka wê de cî xwe girt.
So as one of ISIS purposes was to take control of women and break its will, women here in North and East Syria felt that they have to hold the arm and start fighting for their rights and not wait for men to do this for them.
شرم gelekî dijwar bûn di nava ve şehran de teqandin pir hatine çêkirin silahên cure hatine şoxlandin û êrişên ku berçavê me serê însana hatine jêkirin zarok jin hatin kolekirin ji şengalê bigire heta nê bi Rojava vana rojane me di nava ragihandinê de û berçavê xwe jî ji ber ku em nav de bûn me didîtin.
So in the fight against ISIS we faced everything. Like all kinds of fighting, we led huge and brutal battles against ISIS. We saw how civil people, especially women and children, were killed and kidnapped in Kobani, in Shangal, and everywhere in North and East Syria.
Yekemin Armanca me ev bû ku em di nava vî şerî de însan çawa biparêzin. Yani belki yek ji hedefan be ama yek û axê dike însan vê ji bo me însan di derecaya kemîn de bû ji ber wê em ketine nav şereke ew qet dijwar.
What was important for us as forces was to protect human. Maybe some people think that our aim was to take control of territory, but that's not important for us. What is important for us was to protect civil people.
دوی دمی دم پروژه دنیای لیکلک خدیتن دل همیا به هفدور لید دا به مر لید دا به بجبو مواتای کی پرمزن هبو.
Also in the fight against terrorism, many women from all around the world joined us, and we knew that their hearts are beating for us.
دوی شرید دزانین کت مپر حوالی خودان حوالی میگو د تقامنیات شهید کتن حوالی میگو د پفچون و یکسر دنوا چپران ده شهید کتن هوای میجینی کو حتی نیوی داویه ده شخص شهید آواز ده شرک الحسکه هاتی کرن ده مشهید دانه هنن.
In the fight against terrorism, we lost many greats of our comrades. Many great comrades we lost until now. in the fight in Hueran prison in Hasake, we lost one of our comrades called Awaz.
جيكوباني حياني برقة حتاني بدرزور عفرين حسكي أم هنجي نظوي تكوشني دنا وهنجي أم بوي إسرائيلنا كو أم رين ندن ناكو بفكر إسلاما راديقال دولة والناباكرم وناجيكو جن ببن كولدنا بسيستمي ده جبار ويجي يعني خوا دانا بيش دشار ده وهرتم لبرانبري هر إيرشاكي آماده بوين و دچپرا دجي خوا گرتن ام وانا هنجي حتى نها لسر سوزا خوا يكي ام شوبين و بيبدچن.
We still continue combating all kinds of radical Islamic in Raqqa, Afrin, Deir ez-Zor, Kobani, everywhere. We're still continuing the resistance against all radical factions.
يا قلت تاني قاشكرنا عن هاوكو راح تيك الدنيا دا تشي قلت يعني داعش بداوي بو دولة إسلامي بداوي بو لقوري ما بتشيك جراسي قطع.
Maybe when we announced the defeat of the Islamic State, the world was satisfied with this idea.
جبركو دخلت نزي روجافا ده باكوري سوريا روجلات سوريا ده ام روجانه دبینیم کو چاوا داعش خابنو و برخستن دیگه و لربازه که دیگه کو تکار به جاری گدن خوازن دی بکه.
But we weren't satisfied because we are here in North and East Syria, we're living here, and we knew that ISIS is still trying to reorganize itself and looking for methods and ways to reorganize itself and start attacking again.
ما قلك جرى فراسي عني سرزمان ما قلت كي خطرية داعش دوما راستا وك يا بيكي وك أباهي كي دولات يا جنبيجن أقدسي ودنا مايا وك فكر وك إيديولوجي حتى نها تشاوا خواهين زنديدك وأف مجد ببقرة حطاني سريكانية حطاني بقامبا هولي هنيك جين كنت عراقي دا حيانها داعش خبت دا خصتن دك وجنوبه هذا حكم سرتك فقط زيدا نكدوي جرام بني دبمرة.
We've been calling upon all the states around the world that ISIS still present a risk for everyone in Deir ez-Zor, in Al-Hol camp, in Grespi, in Serikaniye, in many regions that Islamic factions are taking control. ISIS still exists, and also ISIS still exists through its ideology that many people in the controlled area by ISIS were affected by.
ما قلك جرت تكرين دولة تركو داعش ببلغان مداني مكان روجافا دنيا ديارة جديدة لي دخوية كود هناك برجوادين سياسي ناهي لكو ريد بيشابي ورا قرتن ياجي تركيا اف حسب ورا خواستن حتى انها آگاهی روزانه تنكو لسريكاني داعش جاري كدن ببنابي رخصتنا انتقام جي اسلامي را جاي دخواب رخصتن تكن نابي خود قهوره وترك جيفيرة دولة تركيا جيفيرة مساعدتك جيدة حتى جوانا را هناك منطقان بلدك كنت كاربن في بكن.
And we've been showing for all the world the relation of Turkish state and ISIS, but we know that due to many political or economic interest, no one can say anything to the Turkish state. We know now that, so we were talking about the relation between Turkish state and ISIS and how Turkish state is providing assistance help to ISIS sleeper cells to reorganize itself.
جبرويكي أب خطري أنا بحبسة صناعة لحسكي جاري كدن رودا طبي بيجي ده قامبا هولجي يعني مخيم هولجي بما برسكريكي كمان زنا جبكو جراني جن زاروكن وما برجارة جوت هان شاري سري جريك جبير برسكريكي روبرداني.
And we saw how ISIS could reorganize itself and start attacking again through what happened in Hueran prison in Hasake. We've been telling all the world that this is a complicated problem and we can't face it alone. We can't address it alone. And one of the main problems for us also is Al-Hol camp, which is holding thousands of ISIS families, especially children and women.
رغم كنت أبدأ خوازي ما برجرات نسر زمان ما جالك دولة نكهتن تبياري وهمالاتي خوا ين جن وزاروك نقرتن وأبيك يعني باركي جرانة يعني سر ببريا خوا سرجي لسر قصدي باركي جرانة جبر كنت يعني بيشرو جوان زاروكا جرك يدي ضمانك جيرة ورا شيكرن زاروكن تشوجي كيوان تفهم بسكريكا دنينة فقط دولة جرك اللي خودي دار بكابن هي زاري ببريا خوا سر وقصدي تيري ناكي كو بيشرو جوان زاروكا تشتكي خويا دينا ورتها يعني.
Despite all the calls for all the states around the world to come and repatriate their citizens, their ISIS citizens, especially women and children, but unfortunately the international community is not assuming their responsibilities toward this complicated issue. And the autonomous administration and the Syrian Democratic Forces don't have the enough capabilities to deal with this issue.
جبرتي باركي جرانة جبر كتروجانا إيرش لسر هرم المهنن جمرة دين قوتنكي جيكي بأوله وأب زاروك لجي أم لجيبكن لزاروك ما بخوا ند أوله يدنا هر روشكو مسيرات تركان لددن هر روشكو تشتي كل جم تركان لددن بدها زاروك ما يكون جانا خوا دانه هنا ورابور بانا هميا آمادنه ام جبو زارو که خوان کان اولهیه چیه بکن حتی نها ام هول دنکو في بکن یه داعشی ام چوا جیکی به اوله جوانا را آماده بکن.
So many organizations are asking us to provide a safe place in life for those ISIS children who are a victim of a political or a military crisis. It is difficult for the autonomous administration and the Syrian Democratic Forces to do this because every day our regions are being attacked by many parties. We can't protect our children, the children of this region. Every day our children here are being killed and attacked by all means. And how can we, if we can't provide a safe life and place for our children, how can we do it for ISIS children?
ديسا يعني أجر خطر نجبو دنياي دولة عظمى جبي خطرية ترسن وهمالات يخوان ناقرن هزكيكو جنوبا آواد باجيكيكو جنوبا رخصنا خوشي كاستما خوشي ديكي بكري ببريا خواسر وقصده كاو جبين باري رابع ودولة هري مزن خناد نبال بباري.
Many states around the world know that ISIS are a risk and danger for all the world, and they are not taking their citizens back, their ISIS citizens back, because they know that they will be a danger on them and their state and their citizens' home. So how can they expect from the autonomous administration, which is newly established and trying to continue as it is doing to deal with ISIS issue?
هندك كسي كود نافا أب دولة إسلامية جي داعشي كو هنيدا إيكو دخوازن در كبن إيكو إدي نما دخوازن دنافان دجي خوا بقرن هنن وهجمارة كي نهندك جي إيكو دخوازن بقرن جيانة كي نورمال جيان بكن يعني أما دما كترج ونار ناي ذاكرن ودي سبزي بالمكي داعشي جيان بكن وعيني خطري دوام بكن يعني ريك جبان إنسان كو دخوازن نورمال جيانا خوا وتبلغونا خوا جبا كرتشي بكن جرك ريك جوانار ورديتن.
Also, many ISIS members who are now held in detention centers and camps regretted what they did, and maybe they are thinking of being back to their normal life. Maybe they want their states to come and take them back so that they can start a normal life again. We are looking for ways to provide them with what they want.
جبر كنت ملكي دجي بقاسي كنت أم هذا حكوم دكين جبوكو أم دكاربن بيت داري راكن لدردورا ماجي كسين كنت جاش دولات وهزين كنت إيريش ربابريا خسر دكين دخازة بروجي بالا دربخين هاي روجان أم دبن أمبارغوين أبوري دجيان دكين معبرتنا قرتن وأب باندورا كي برج دي لسر أبوريا مادكيا كي روشا ماي أبوري بشتي قانون قيصر هر کودچه زحمتی دکشینه جوار کامجی زحمتی دکشینه به وی رنگی امی برنگی کی دمنه آبوری تجی امی نکاربن جوانا را احتیاجی وان یا جنده جن پروژه کو جبو وانا ام پیش بخنه امی نکاربن بکن ام جبر وی کی وی مجاری دخوازن کو همی جن به هدره ام برنگی کی جدی نقاش بکن و دو هر ولاته کی ده ام لپروژین کوت ام جبو وان جنان جبو وان زاروکان چاره سری دا آواکرن گرک ام لسری بهبش بخبته.
As we are looking for a solution for ISIS issue and until their states come and take them back, we have to look for a temporary solution, which is providing rehabilitation programs for women and children and teenagers of ISIS. But unfortunately, we can't do this because the autonomous administration here is facing a lot of troubles, especially economic troubles, like we are passing through an embargo. And we are suffering from all the aspects. There are many problems that we are facing now and we are suffering from. So how can we solve this trouble? We want as women to gather and start discussing this. How can we solve this trouble together?
دنابا بان مالبات و جنین کود قامپا هوله ده یکو روزانه زاروکان پرورده دیکن لسر فکر داعشی هنن دملی فرکرنا شدتی فرکرنا کشتنی هنک زاروکی کوتن رواندن درباسی البادیه دیکن جبکو وانا وک انتحاری حاضر بکن و ریکن و یکو درباسی ملی ادلبی دیکن یکو جنوب وانا جبو شهر آماده دیکن جبر ويجي يعني بروجين جدي وقرار ناف دولتي جدي جبو فانا ابي جريكو ولا قرتن اجر ان بحث خطر يا داعش دكن اوي هنجي اف داعش كو ما كومكر ما شاركر ما خلاص كر ما كومكر جي كومكرني شون ده تتي خواستن جريك او چاره سري ور نقاش كر
So we announced the defeat of the Islamic State and we captured ISIS families and fighters. We are holding ISIS families inside camps, but although they are captured, but they are raising their children on ISIS mentality. They are teaching them the radical Islamic teachings, and they are smuggling their children to Al-Bariya and preparing them to do bombing operations, self-bomb operations, and they are smuggling them and sending them to Idlib to raise them on Islam mentality and prepare them to be ISIS fighters in the future. This trouble is very complicated and it's dangerous, not only for us, for all the world. That's why we are looking for solutions to solve this problem.
پروگرام تأهیلی کجبو زاروک هاتنه چیکرن هنن جی کوت ده زاروک تنه پرورده کرن اکوت هانه وان حاضر دکن کو ببینه جانه کی نورمال دکاربن بدو مینن هی فقط اف زاروکن کو 14 سالی جباغوز هاتن آنها اف زاروک بون 18 سالی بون 17 سالی هنیک وانا 15 سالی بون آنها بون 19 سالی اوینگی یعنی پشتی کوت تأهیل کرن جی کی کو اف زاروک بچینه کدره دما کو مزم به یه در باسی گرتیگه هم ببین اف نابه چاره سری به اف بخاره هین آلوزی مستر دیگه اف زارو جی کدوره تأهیل کرن وقتی که شون ده دزیبره وکی فکر داعش جیان شخواره وسا دبنیش برکو باشقه چاره وینینه یعنی.
Also, if we talk about ISIS children, there are centers that are providing rehabilitation programs for those children. If we say that one of the children who was captured, he was 15 that time, and now he's 18 or 19. He wants to start a normal life now, but where can we send him after he's 18? We have to release him, but if we release him, he'll be back to ISIS mentality and he will be an ISIS fighter again. There is no solution for those children. We can't guarantee their future here.
دنیا همید زنه کد شهر خلاص بیه لروجاوا جان نورمال بیه روشی که بیرنگینه ام 10,018 حتی روجا ایرود نوا شهر دنن اف شهر بحجران دبه اف شهر بإيرشن سرهنك جيان دبه بحاضر كرنا إيريشان دبه بلدانك كود ملء حدود تركان ده تشكرن دبه روجافا ده بلكي دنيا ناخر روجافا خده ناخذ بخير روجافا خده بالتالي دولة ناخذ بخير روجافا خده فقط شهر دوامه بلکه نوعی که بری لی جی تو هر جاره ام دنوا آماده کاریه دنه کو ام رل پیشه بگیرن و ام نهل بمزن به ام نهل ببری خستن لسر آگاهی استخباراتی دبه لسر خبات میکو روزانه نقاط می قصد دومه یا پیش دومینه نهی لکوت اف خطری پیش دوره يعني تاني ما پیشه گردیه فقط هيا و ام دناف شهر دنه.
Maybe people around the world think that since the military defeat of ISIS, the region is safe and everyone is living in a satisfied way, but that's not true. We are still fighting, we are still resisting, Turkey is attacking us daily. And there are many individual attacks by terrorist factions. We are still fighting. We are still trying to not let those attacks become bigger against us.
Evek nava gele Rojava de gele Bakur Rojava Suriye'de çavatin erxandın. Edi gel nama duxaze Daesh'in kut de kampa hole de nama duxaze de hapsa de nama duxaze gel 121 şehidin daviye dane برنگی ایشه که مزین جوانار داد شکرن جبرکو گل روجاوا بحق ندکر اگر دنیای عالی کاری کرد با هزین سیاسی عالی کاری کرد با گرک ندکر ما اوقاس شهید دابونه.
And also, I want to mention that people of North and East Syria are tired of what's happening against them. In the last incident that happened in Hueran prison in Hasake, we lost 121 martyrs. They were sons and daughters of people of North and East Syria, and it was a painful event for everyone here. People think that it is enough. We are tired of paying sacrifices in the fight against ISIS and terrorism. If the international community and the powerful states, hegemonic states around the world can do anything, they have to do something towards this issue so that we wouldn't pay any sacrifice more.
دوی شریده مهوال یعنی میگم بحثا یکی از جن کر یا جنی کو دوی شریده همی هفته گرتن و شهر کرن جن مجبورن شهر بکن دشری داوید جنی یه نحسه که باجر نحسه که به پیرن خوابه به جوانن خوابه همیشه کتن نوا کلانش به کلان خواب پاریزن چونکی دخوازه خواب پاریزه بری هر تشتکی جبو پاراستنا خوابی دیگه مالا خواه زاروکن خواه جوانن خواه جبر وی دایک دنوا یکی تیکی دبونو همیا هفته گرتن کودکاربن بلا داعشی بداوی بکن نوا حسه که ده بری کو بلاف دبه جبر وی جی مجبوریتا کو هایی کو ام خواب پاریزن دیله کو آنان ام مساشر بکن اگر نوسا بوا همیا حسه که و جنن حسه که و همی اروجوات کارن نورمال جیان بکرانا.
And if we come to talk about women's struggle here, especially in the last incident in Hasake, women thought that they have to pick up the arm and start struggling and fighting against terrorism and what's happening around because they thought that they have to protect themselves, they have to protect their homes and children. That's why we gather together as unions and we are trying to continue struggle against all what's happening around us.
نا تشتي كنت أم دبي مجرد بيجن أبي يعني دنابا هبديتني كدر حقي سوري دتنا لدار خصن تشل جنابة دتشل كدر دبا نا قصدي هيا نجي ربابريا خاسر هيا يعني كسي كهري ما تمثيل دك نينا دنابا جهران دنا دستورة سوريا ده نينا دنابا محافل دولي ده يا جنبيجن جيكي كنت ده أم دكاربن درد خابين سر زمان نينا peki ev qasbar hatiya vetin serme ji bu çi em ji dixwazin vê fehm bikin gel vî pirsê pirs dike yani em yani ji bu çi ev qase bedel didin û hemî dünya dibêje ev xeterî ji bo hemî dünyaya ve dünya em bi tenê hîştire ev pirsekî ku êdî em qese de ji gelê xwe re bersiv danina wê de em zehmetî dikişînin جبر رجاز بجم یک جمجان سرکه اوه پولیتیکای کل برانبری هریم متن مشاندن گره برانگی که راست ورا نقاش کرن ام لجبو هنک مصلحت دولت هم بهفدره جبو چقاره وانکو بهفدره هر تم لدربی هر تشتکی هاتنا اشتن و بچاره سری هاتنا اشتن ایدی روشه کی کمه همیا دخل تنگاویه ده و زحمتی ده چیکرن.
People here are also thinking that despite all the sacrifices that we are paying in the fight against the most dangerous organization in the world, which is ISIS, despite all the fight against ISIS and terrorism, the representatives of the autonomous administration and the people of North and East Syria are excluded from the, aren't included in the international talks and rounds for solving the Syrian crisis. If we're not included in these talks and in the constitutional committee that is going to change the Syrian constitution, why we are paying all these sacrifices when the world is not trying or thinking of giving us our rights? If anyone has any question, we are ready to answer.
All right, thank you so much, Arzi. Gelek spas, Jbo Bashtarbunate, thank you for your participation. That was a very important discussion of many of the pressing military issues that North and East Syria is facing and the pressing political issues that they're facing. And now turning from on the ground in North and East Syria to the region's diplomatic representations abroad, our next speaker will be Sinam Mohammed. Sinam was the founding co-president of the People's Council of Western Kurdistan, which was founded in 2011 during the beginning of the Syrian uprising and operated as the supreme political body of the liberated areas of northern and northeastern Syria. This governing body today is now known as the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, which is associated with the Syrian Democratic Forces. Sinam has served as the European representative of the Autonomous Administration, as the co-chief of the US mission of the Syrian Democratic Council in Washington, DC. Sinam is currently the top diplomat of the Autonomous Administration. She is also a member of the Presidential Council of the SDC. All right, thank you, Sinam.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for organizing this panel discussion. It's really so important. And thank you for everyone who is now attending this panel. I'm seeing here our friend Margaret on. Thank you, Margaret. Happy to see you here. Thank you so much. Now, when we are talking about the women and about the uprising in 2011 in Syria, how we now, what we reached now, what we got from this let's say the Syrian uprising from 2011 till now. We believe that the women revolution is actually considered the revolution of the society. So if you want to build a democratic society based on freedom and the rights of women, based on democracy, based on the religious of freedom, and we have to educate this society and to work with the women in the beginning. So any society which the woman, that the women, they don't enjoy all these rights, that the democracy, the women rights, that will be, this society will be actually, the democracy in this society will be incomplete. The more the women take a leading role in her society, the more this society will be developed and democratic. For that, when we work in the Northeast Syria, we worked with the women, not only the Kurdish women. Kurdish women, had the leading role actually, but we are working with all the women. We concern about all the women in Syria, Syrian women. We have Arab women, we have in Tabqa, in Deir ez-Zor, in all the Arab region and all over Syria, and even in the other part of Syria, which is under the control of the regime or anyone. And we, in the Northeast Syria, we had many organizations for women, like the Syrian Council for Women. For the SDC, they have the Women Council, so that the women could play a very great role in all the institutions in the autonomous administration. It is in the politic, diplomat, culture, social, everywhere in the society. So wherever we can have this institution, the women are there in every institution. Actually, the participant of the women is 50%. I think it is a percentage. Sometimes it is not being found in any other places. So the woman, she took her role, as I mentioned, in diplomat, in politics, but not only that. She took her very major role in defending, protecting, and in the military also section. In the military, when ISIS and the radical terrorist groups, they attacked our region, they didn't depend on only men to protect them. Women, they will be able to protect themselves, protect their society, and protect their people as well. And for that, they started as our, comrade Arzi. She talked in a very detail about their role. In Kobani, from Kobani to defeating even the Islamic State of the Caliphate, the capital city, Al-Raqqa city. Deir ez-Zor, and at the end, defeating ISIS militarily. But defeating ISIS militarily, that doesn't mean that you defeat ISIS or the terrorist ideology even. It is so important now. The Kurdish women, they played a very major role in defeating ISIS in Kobani and in Al-Raqqa, in Deir ez-Zor. And I think the book of the Daughters of Kobani book, which has been written by the Gail Lemon, it is giving us a real stories of these women in the front line with ISIS, fighting ISIS. So really, when you read it, you can just live the story, because it is not just a dreaming of the story, it's real story. And for that, everyone, they love this book. But what happened? The women there, they were protecting their people, their society, but we have to know they were protecting all the world, the women in the world. They are fighting on behalf of all the women in the world. When we think about what could happen if these groups of ISIS, they spread everywhere, what could happen to the women in the world, in Europe, in all over the world. And this is very important for us to know. But still, as a woman in SDF, they are fighting and they are struggling so far. They did not just finish militarily defeating ISIS and they were okay. No, still the ideology of ISIS is there. So in order to defeat the ideologies, you can defeat it by bullets. You have to defeat it by even educating the people and educating the society there. And I don't want to mention all the points that Arzi mentioned about the Al-Hol camp, educating mothers, their children, or in the detention centers for the fighter, 12,000 people, fighters, dangerous fighters of ISIS in the detention centers. And Al-Hol camp, which hold about 60,000 of families, women, children, and men from these families of ISIS. These, both of them, if you calculate it, it makes as big as inhabitants, or the population of the 2 cities in Northeast Syria. So imagine these big numbers of the terrorist people, these ideologies, are in your place, and you are alone and defeating and fighting in the military side, in the social side, and in everything, economic side. I would like here to thank the US Army by helping. Of course, they are supporting and helping the SDF, especially what happened recently in Al-Hasaka prison. It was really great support. But this will not be enough. And what happened in Al-Hasaka prison taught us a lesson. And this lesson said that ISIS is still there. The threat of ISIS and the terrorists are still in the region. They are trying to re-emerge again. They are threatening the whole region, and not only in the northeast Syria, in the other region, for instance, in Idlib, where al-Qurashi being killed, and where al-Baghdadi before also was killed there, which is at the border of Turkey. And in Idlib, which is al-Qurashi being killed, which is at the border of Afrin city. So we have to know that these leaders of the ISIS or terrorist people, HTS or the Al-Qaeda or ISIS, whoever, they have the same ideology. Enslaving the women, humiliating the women. And this is what are they doing? When we think about al-Qurashi being killed at the border of Afrin, we have to know that these regions under the control of Turkey and the groups backed by Turkey, like Ahrar al-Sharqiyya, like Al-Abshat, Al-Hamzat, Sultan Shah, whatever, all these groups, they are really targeting the women there, targeting the Kurdish people actually in Afrin. I can say in Sarikaniye, in Tal Abyad, in Afrin, in Idlib, it has become a safe haven for such terrorist leaders in this region. And we have to know that. The plan, which has been planned onto Al-Hasaka prison, people, they came from Sarikaniye, Ras Al Ain, under the occupied of Turkish and backed groups there. So they are happy to move there. And I mentioned also, I will mention another video I watched last year. Abdullah al-Muhaisiri. Abdullah al-Muhaisiri, a Saudi from Al-Qaeda, designated as a terrorist figure. He was in Afrin, meeting the people there in the council, making a visit to Afrin people there. He has some friends. So what does it mean? It's a bigger question mark. So we have to know that if we want to end the threat of ISIS, the threat of terrorist group to our region, it is not only in northeast Syria. And this is very important to us. So the ideology of ISIS, which depends on humiliating the woman, as I mentioned, enslave the women, like it happened for Yazidi women. Until now, we have thousands of Yazidi women been missing. And in Afrin women, now we have many of them been missing there. We don't know what happened to them. Some of them being killed, some of them being raped, and in the present till now. And till now, the violation of human rights in Afrin, it's going on. Nobody talk about that. There is the silence about that. The people there, they are arresting the people and asking for ransom. So these military groups who are in Afrin, who are in Sarikaniye, they are committing a lot of crimes there. If we are concerning about the human rights, about democracy, there is a violation for human rights there and violation for all principles of democracy there. So I call here on the international organization, whether women organization or the UN organization, to go to Afrin, to Ras Al Ain, and to make investigation real investigation about what's going on in Africa. And we need to hold these people who commit these crimes accountable for their crimes. Otherwise, keeping silent, keeping them to do whatever they want, it doesn't work. And one day will come, they will be a threat to many other people in the other region. And this is what we are afraid of. Of course, if we compare now the system which is in the northeast Syria and the system which is in other regions, for instance, in the occupied regions, in Afrin, in Ras Al Ain, Tel Abyad, Idlib, whatever. If you compare it, how the women are active and taking the role in the northeast Syria, and they are playing a great role in the society and in every institution, you will not find it in the other region. There is no participation of the women there. There is no respecting for the women's rights there. And this will give us a very significant sign that the women there endangers, the women's rights endangers. The lack of any solution, political solution for Syria, it increased that more and more. So if we want to have a democratic Syria, we have to empower actually the autonomous administration in northeast Syria. Autonomous administration, it needs economic support. It needs more educational centers, schools, healthcare, hospitals, infrastructures like water, like electricity. And if you create many development, let us say, projects in the autonomous administration region, that will be an opportunity to create jobs for the young people there, so that these young people will not go and that ISIS will recruit them for the sake of the money. So if we create jobs for the young people, that will be a good opportunity to end even recruiting some people to join ISIS. So economic support is very important. Political support to have the autonomous administration, the SDC, Syrian Democratic Council, in all the peace talk of Syria, in the constitution of the future of Syria. If we are not there, if the women, they don't play a big role in the constitution of Syria, who will guarantee the women's rights in this the new constitution of the future of Syria? I need to see myself in this constitution. I need to guarantee my rights as a woman and as a Kurdish also in the new constitution. If we are not represented in this, we will not be able to guarantee all our rights there. For that, I call that supporting the economy in the autonomous administration, supporting the system in the autonomous administration system, the equal gender, the freedom of religions, Syria, the women, and today is the Mother Tongue Day. Look at the Northeast Syria. We have 3 official languages. We have Kurdish language, we have Arabic language, we have Syriac language, which is the Aramaic language, which is the language of Jesus. We have to protect this plurality there. And we are protecting it. We are practicing it there. We are creating a new system to have a democratic Syria in the future. We need the support from the international community. We need the support from all the organization of women in the northeast Syria there. We need it. If we want to end the ISIS ideology, if we want to end the tyranny system, building a system which is alternative as a democratic system, and we should support this unique model in Syria. It is a unique model and will be an aspiration for all the Syrian people, which we ask it for decentralized system, pluralistic system, democratic system. And this is what we need, actually. For that, I'm just want to say that it is very important to support the women, to support this system and this unique system in order to build a new Syria away from the radicalism and extremism, away from the humiliating women, a new Syria depending on democracy, real democracy. And this is what we need for the support from the international community. Thank you so much. I would be happy to answer your question. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sinam, for that brilliant evaluation of the political situation. I do think that when we're having these conversations about security that we've had in the wake of the Hasaka prison break, talking about the Turkish-controlled areas of Syria as a base of operations for these extremist groups is something that's been left out of the discussion. So there is a direct connection between the human rights situation in places like Afrin and the fact that under the rule of these human rights abusing groups and Turkish de facto control of those regions, we've seen not just a humanitarian catastrophe, but a security catastrophe. But now moving on to a different aspect of the ISIS issue in a little bit more depth, we're going to hear from our next speaker, Benedetta Argentieri. Benedetta is a documentary filmmaker and journalist. She's traveled on the ground in North and East Syria since 2014, where she investigated the role of women in war and reconstruction after the ISIS defeat. She's directed feature-length documentaries, and her articles have appeared on international media outlets. And she will talk about her experience in Al-Hol and Ain-Issa camps, where she interviewed several ISIS-affiliated women about their role with the Islamic State. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on this great panel. As Megan said, I will talk about my experiences in the camps where ISIS women are being held in northern eastern Syria. I visited these camps many times, and the situation, I can say, is extremely difficult and a threat to peace and safety in the region. I wanted to start from March 2019 as the Battle of Baghouz, as the Islamic State was being militarily defeated in Baghouz. Thousands of women from all over the world who joined ISIS surrendered to the Syrian Democratic Forces. No one expected so many people to come out from Baghouz. Also, as these women were surrendering, there was a lot of tension. Some have made attacks against the SDF and continued to pledge alliance to Daesh. Others just claimed to be victims of their husbands who forced them to go to Syria, and they did nothing. They were just housewives. This is what they claimed in front of dozens of cameras that came to Baghouz. This victim narrative created a lot of problems. It was embraced by international media mainstream in a very uncritical way. It is problematic, obviously, for a lot of reasons. First, it reinforces the idea that women can take decisions on their own, and therefore they must be convinced by their husbands to actually join Daesh, which is untrue, obviously. Then many of these women were still very radical, hid behind this narrative, and they claimed to have done nothing, hoping that they could go back quietly to their countries. Most of the women who surrendered in Baghouz were brought to either Al-Hol camp or Ain-Issa camp. The Ain-Issa camp was destroyed in October 2019 during the Turkish invasion of northern eastern Syria, the third invasion of Turkey. Turkey shelled the camp, targeted the camp, allowing ISIS women to escape. While in Al-Hol camp, we are talking about at least 10,000 foreign women and children out of a population of 64,000 that is mainly affiliated with the ISIS. Going in the camp with the camera has a lot of risks of being attacked. In fact, the women are still very aggressive, and several crews have been assaulted. This has never happened personally to me, but I know journalists who actually were wounded by this woman. Few months after their arrival of this woman in Al-Hol, it was very clear that they were still very radical. And within months, they were able to recreate the Islamic State structures within the camp, including Islamic courts. I will give you some examples. Anyone who dared to take off their niqab was severely punished. The children as Comrade Arzi pointed out, are being raised with ISIS ideology to continue the jihad. And assaults and killings are very high. According to the UN, Al-Hol is the most dangerous place on earth, and it has the highest crime rates in the world. This is obviously very, very difficult to manage. And women have been increasingly resistant to talking on the record. When I was there, a member of the Azayash was stabbed by a woman who was able to flee. They staged an attack. Another time, tents were set on fire, and again, to cover other things happening in this very, very large camp. Or another time, a woman who denounced the Islamic courts disappeared in the middle of the night, and her child was left alone. The guards believed that she was killed and her body hidden, and her body was never found. Often there are coordinated attacks in a different section of the camp. Women have started several GoFundMe campaigns raising money in order to try to escape. Women in ISIS, and we go back to this problem of describing the woman in this way, of this victim narrative, because in ISIS, women had very clear tasks and structure. They were welcome to a number of jobs, including the battlefields. On this regard, in the United States, the FBI has arrested a woman who is accused to have trained women who then fought in Raqqa. Women in ISIS had also a prominent role in the Yazidi trade, the horrific practices of selling captured women and girls in the markets. Or they have prominent roles in the Hizbah, in the Islamic police, which was punishing other women for not observing the strict dress code imposed by Daesh. Now, what I'm describing, again, doesn't align with this victim narrative. Of course, there are also women who have been forced to go to Syria and they were trapped in the Islamic State, though these women are still a minority. The situation in Al-Hol is really terrible. Many have described it as a ticking bomb, ready to explode at any time. The main problem is the international community, which is not willing to make decisions about thousands of their citizens, leaving the burden to the locals on the ground and not helping with the everyday operations in the camp. The autonomous administration proposed back in 2019 to make an international court in Syria, where also the victims could go and speak and testify, though this option was rejected by the international community. What is clear is that this situation can't be ignored. ISIS has been defeated on the ground, yes, but as it was pointed out before, the ideology is still very strong and it is still a threat to everyone and not just to northern eastern Syria. So this is very much it. Thank you very much. And for any questions, I will be happy to answer.
All right, thank you so much for providing that real on the ground in-depth experience with an issue that gets a lot of discussion in the media, but sadly, as you described, we've seen far too little international action on. Truly appreciate that. So we're now getting to our last speaker. Ainur Zaid Pasha is a Kurdish women's rights activist from North and East Syria, born in Durik in 1975. She graduated from the University of Aleppo and has worked as a lawyer since 2001. She's previously worked with the human rights organization in the Jazeera region of North and East Syria and is currently working with a group of other women experts at the Center for Research and Protection of Women's Rights, which promotes women's rights in the region and working towards equal participatory roles for women in the Democratic Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria. All right, Ainur, I'm going to unmute you.
Good evening for all of you. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for all of you. I think the presence of women here is evidence of what women have achieved in North and East of Syria. The women in Rojava proven themselves at all fields, diplomatic, military, political, administrative, and even social level. And our military forces, especially women forces, fought instead of whole the world. The ISIS matter is a very big and complicated problem on the land here in Rojava and for whole of world. When ISIS started his attack on our area from Shangal to Mosul, from Kobani to Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor. They have committed crimes against humanity and war crimes against Kurdish people, if we try to classify these crimes according to international law. The terrorist organization target the Kurds in systematic way. They killed the men in Shangal and enslaved the women and children and led women to sell them and raped them, some of them. In Kobani, they committed the crime of genocide against its residents. They killed more than 277 persons, 64 women and 35 child and 178 men. Our center has documented most of these who were victims of the genocide carried out by ISIS. And every person had a story, and he left behind people who remember the tragedy that occurred daily and wish revenge and justice for their children. In Kobani, our women's forces was the reason of defeat ISIS and liberated Kobani. When Arin Mirkan, by her suicide, the process stopped the attack of ISIS to the area. After the fall of the Islamic State and the defeat of ISIS, more than 12,000 ISIS fighters were detained in prison in the region of North and Eastern Syria. The number of their families are more than 70,000 people were placed in Al-Hol camp, which is considered the most dangerous place in the world. Our center worked on documenting the violation committed by ISIS against the Yazidi women by sitting with the liberated ones. They talked about the suffering violence and that they forced, especially the girls who did not leave her religion and embrace Islam, receiving the worst types of torture and suffering. Then we wanted to collect evidence, so we began to work on ISIS women in Al-Hol camp files. The conducted interviews with women from different nationalities within the camp. We found that there are three categories of women within ISIS. There are radical, as Banita said, there are radical and takfiri women, and they have children with them who are trained and learn from the same thoughts in which they believe and forbidding everything. These kinds is very dangerous in whole. The other type of them are women who were victims of the organization's media and cosmetic propaganda and its promises to establish an Islamic State which they can live well and happily, that they were forbidden to practice in. The another category is women who were forced to come to the Islamic State or relative. We had met women who was forced to come with her only daughter, whose husband had brought her to Syria. Recently, the autonomous administration sorted more than 500 women with their children to Roj camp on Al Jazeera to protect them from killing and revenge if they wanted to leave ISIS. The women live with their children in camp that lack the lowest standards of a decent life. And these are children who lost their parents in Baghouz during the liberation period. Most of them communicate with their families and with some lawyers and express their remorse and their desire to return to their homelands. Most countries are not aware of the great danger that exists in these camps and refuse to assume their responsibilities and return women and children to their countries. Most of the women we interviewed have high academic qualifications. Most of them are university graduates, and the reason that brought everyone together to join the Islamic State is to try to escape from their psychological, social, and economic reality that they were suffering from their families and society. They found relief in the so-called state. And the other thing that they witnessed is that they all came regularly and legally to Turkey, and and the families were gathered with them in luxurious villas in Gaziantep, while the men were going to receive courses and military intellectual training for a whole month, and then they are entered into Syria through the Jarablus border after passports were taken from them, and the crossing is by the irregular route and with the Turkish border guards and the Turkish army. Therefore, the defeat of ISIS was a defeat for the Turkish state, which always trying to revenge its defeat with repeated attack on the regions of northern and east Syria, especially the city of Kobane, which was the beginning of the defeat for ISIS, and it often targets women to break the feminist will and spread terror and fear in the area. Thank you. And the autonomous administration does not have capabilities to bear and burdens of their survival in northern and eastern Syria. So the international community should help the administration prosecute the radical and provide support and assistance to its citizens who are in the camps in our areas. Thank you for all of you.
Thank you, Ainur, for that very informative presentation. So we're now going to move into a Q&A. We've heard about so many important essential topics from our speakers today, from the theory and practice behind women's unprecedented roles in the revolution and the fight against ISIS in North and East Syria, to updates from women on the ground with the YPJ, abroad with North and East Syria's diplomatic missions, to in-depth calls to deal with pressing human rights and security issues like the problem of ISIS detainees, like the problem of the occupation of Afrin and Ras Al Ain and other Kurdish cities controlled by Turkey and radical armed groups. And we've learned why dealing with these problems and strengthening the autonomous administration and its structures based on women's freedom and women's participation in all areas of life is something that will not just address these challenges, but build a true alternative for the region in the long term. So with that, if you have a question for any of our speakers, please do send it in the chat. I will read the questions out loud. The speakers will answer. I will not be unmuting anyone to ask questions. Thank you. All right, we've got our first question here from Mark Campbell. Mark says, the UK especially has a very close diplomatic relationship with Turkey, but if we are able to communicate the message to the wider British public that the UK, by supporting Turkey, are supporting ISIS against the Kurds, who've made such a sacrifice in militarily defeating ISIS, our job surely is to expose these shameful relationships that shock people who find out about them. Our challenge is, how do we communicate this to the wider public in our countries to put pressure on our governments to distance themselves from Turkey and give greater support to the autonomous administration? That's a very important question. Let's say Dilsha or Sinam, working as foreign representatives, do either of you want to take that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, it is very important to know that diplomacy is very important in each country we are there. For I think who is talking from Britain, UK, and I think there is a very great role to communicate with the social, like say we can social democracy. so that we can reach everyone there who is concerning about this issue, to reach to them, to the Congress, to the parliament there, parliament member, so that we can convince them that it is the national interest actually to support such a model in Northeast Syria, and to find the solution for the Syrian crisis. As long as the Syrian crisis there continue, as long as we will find many of the terrorist groups will be active there. So for that, I think it's important to have a relation with the member of the parliament, with the activist who is an activist in UK. You are talking about UK because the question is from there, but many organizations, women organizations who are very active in UK, so that they are supporting and to widen this the network with the organization, with the other people there, with the other organization. I think it works because the civil society organization, they have impact on the government to have the for decision making actually. And we have to know and to show that it is a national interest to defeat ISIS, to end the ideology of ISIS, and to support the autonomous administration and the SDF. SDF is the only forces that we can rely on to fight against the terrorist ideology and terrorist group. Thank you. This is what can I say.
All right, thank you for that. That was a good answer. So we've now got a question from YouTube. What does the rehabilitation and re-education of ISIS members entail? And are there outside assets that could potentially be brought in to assist in that? Benedetta, would you like to take that, based on your research on the ISIS women? I can unmute you.
Yes, sure. I mean, there are a lot of different studies about de-radicalization. We know the experiences in Europe have not gone so greatly, but these are also, the experience in Europe, especially that were dealt with the men that were radicalized within this Daesh, within ISIS, has not produced a great aspect. For sure, what is, there are possibilities for de-radicalization, education, as was pointed out, but has to be done by professionals, first of all. And second of all, this, I personally believe that it shouldn't, replace the responsibilities that this woman had while they were in the Islamic States, because as I interviewed many Yazidi survivors, a lot of them they have expressed, how the conditions were so much worsened by the woman who joined Daesh, and therefore they are actually, there is a need of reconciliation in general, and there is also a need of being taken responsibilities. So I think that the de-radicalization path cannot really replace also what it is needed. So taking responsibilities and understanding much better the ideology. I'm not a professional in this, so I cannot really say which kind of de-radicalization programs should be put in place, but for sure, educations and actually, programs within the camp for sure would help.
All right, thank you for that. Definitely appreciated that answer. So I see a question from Claire Baker. Are the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria still calling for an international court to put ISIS members on trial in North and East Syria, as they were in 2019, and that was rejected? Or has that policy now changed? I think any of our speakers in or from the Northeast could answer that. Sinam, do you want to take it?
Okay. The solution for this detainees, it's really important to have any solution for them. as long as we leave them in the detention centers without any solution, no international tribunal court, no repatriation, no rehabilitation, then these people will think to escape, because they are just sitting many years there, and they will think, what would happen to me? This is what they have to, I mean, they are thinking of. For that, they prepare to escape and to attack and so on. So I think it's, yes, we call for that, but as there is no repatriation, then what's the solution? Let us know about that. Either to trial them in Rojava, and this needs the international support for that. And I think it's very difficult also, as we heard from many countries, they say as the autonomous administration, it is not like an official statute, you know, like that. So for that, they are in our region and they commit crime in our region and they killed our people. So we need to at least to give them to the court, bring them to the court, try them. And we can't do it alone. With the international support, we can do that. But it looks like it is very difficult. It's not acceptable. But still, if there is no solution, I think this is the only solution we can do it. So repatriation is very important. And so far, we are not seeing any countries willing to take them back to their countries. And rehabilitation also is one of the programs that was needed. And I think even rehabilitation, you have to try them, to take them to the court. After that, you can take the rehabilitation. You have to know what did they did, what they commit, what crimes they did it. So this is very important. I think all the programs together, like repatriation, rehabilitation, trying to take them to the court. And we call for that international tribunal. I think it's important, and we hope that we can find a support from the international community.
All right, very important answer. And again, just ensuring that this discussion is still being had and that, you know, states and other international actors are remembering that this is not an issue that's going away. So we are coming up at 2:30. I see we have one final YouTube question that I think we can put to anyone on the panel who wants it. How to support women's liberation in places with no meaningful revolutionary feminist movement? Obviously, that's something that all of these women working under very difficult conditions to build a revolutionary feminist movement have direct experience in. So maybe, Delsha, do you want to take that, you know, on behalf of your experience with Kongra Star? Are you in here? I see not. Does anyone else on our panel want to discuss this? We could have a whole separate panel on this topic. This is very important.
Yes, I can say, Megan. As we said, if we want to empower the system in Northeast Syria, the system that guarantees the equal gender there, you have to support the women organizations there. We have many of the women organizations, SDC Women Council, the Syrian Women Council, Kongra Star, and whatever. We have a lot of them. So I think it's very important to support this Women Council from the international women organization in all over the world. We have to build a network together, women, whoever, I mean, wherever they are there. If they are in the United States, if they are in Europe, if they are in Africa, in everywhere in the world, women, they should empower them, the others. Where it is needed, I should support the women there. If you support the women, that means you are supporting a new system of democracy in your country. If democracy is powerful there, the women's rights will be powerful there, all together, related to each other. So I think it's very important to have the network of all the women organizations UN organization, women, UN, the organization for the UN also is there. I think Margaret Owen is one of them that's supporting, and it's very important to support such program. Whether if they are from, as I mentioned, this women organization supporting them by highlighting on the women situation in the Northeast Syria, by highlight on the crimes that committed on the women in forces in Afrin, in Sarikaniye, by ISIS, by radical group, by highlights on that, I think it's very important so that we can support the women. Whoever, any woman will be there, supporting each other, we can reach to a powerful woman, powerful system, and a democratic system in Northeast Syria and in all over Syria, of course. When I talk in Northeast Syria, that means I will empower the women in all over Syria, and we will have a Syrian democratic, a new democratic Syria in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that answer. This was all a very valuable discussion. We've reached an hour and a half in, and it looks like we've had it with the questions. So I want to once again thank all of our speakers, all of our participants in this dialogue, who asked important questions. We can't let this topic fade away. We can't let this topic be something that the world refuses to pay attention to. So by joining conversations like this one, learning from perspectives on the ground, and continuing to bring up, discuss, and debate these issues, that's a truly important step towards helping strengthen the revolutionary system in North and East Syria and helping these women expand their efforts to change their society, address the threats of ISIS in Turkey, and fully realize the goals of their revolution for the Kurdish people, the people of North and East Syria, and the peoples of the Middle East. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to take this off YouTube, and you all have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you so much.